We'd like to welcome you to part 2 of our conversation with students Jasmine, Marquez, and Eduardo Silva. We asked them to stay for part 2, actually, because we had such an incredible time with them in our conversation in part 1 of the episode. Part 2, we'll talk a little bit about their first couple of days at EPCC, what they were feeling, what they were thinking, a lot of how they think about themselves, what they've learned from their peers, what they predict for the future as it relates to students maybe who are 10 years old or younger as they move into, this political, social, and economic climate. What will they inherit? So thank you for tuning in as always. Thank you for listening to our audio listeners. Always grateful that we have our audience with us today. So appreciate your time in advance and so excited for you to hear our episode. Thank you so much. So, we were just engaged in this wonderful conversation with Eduardo Silva and Jasmine Marquez as it relates to education, journeys, trajectories, and so forth. So what I'd like to do is maybe pinpoint a little bit of your beginning time here at EPCC as you guys got here. Jasmine, let me ask you a little bit about you registered, got here. Tell me a little bit about the very first day of classes. Tell me a little bit about what that experience was like. I remember I didn't even know that you needed a parking pass in Denver. I just drove into a parking lot, parked the car, ran into the classroom, and I was on the downtown campus. And I remember being so scared, fearful, like my heart was just beating. I recall it right now. But what was your time like when you first got to class? What were the first days like?
I would say it was pretty nerve-wracking. I was pretty scared and nervous, and I had to prepare myself before I got out of my vehicle. Like, okay, first day, it's not that bad. It's okay. No one's gonna really care as much as high school, I had got into the classes. The classes were really small, so it was really I was more engaged with my instructors when it came to asking them questions. And then the first day I didn't really speak as much, but my education instructor was like, okay, you're going to present yourself. So I was like, oh, no. I was like, that's the worst day. I was like, that's the worst thing you could ask someone on the first day. And she's like, you have to speak and let everything out. I was like, I can't. I don't know any of these people. But it wasn't a big transition into high school. I felt like the transition was pretty, it wasn't as huge or like, oh, you have to do this. I mean, I get it. We're more independent now and more on our own. But other than that, it was okay. The only thing I would say is I had it registered and my financial aid had said I had covered all my classes. Mm-hmm. However, it turns out that during around the middle of my classes, I couldn't, for some reason, my Blackboard, all of my classes were gone. And I didn't know why. And I had asked you, we could fix this, and we had gone to technical support.
Yeah, I think we went to Andy.
Yeah, we went to Andy to ask him, and he was like, I'm not too sure. He's like, I'm trying my best, because he's like, he gave me his card. He's like, here, you could always call me or contact me through here if it doesn't work. Turns out, though, that my financial aid didn't cover all my classes, and I had to make a payment of, I think it was $7 or $650. I can't remember. However, I made an emergency loan in order to get my classes back, and I could have ample time to make those payments. And they had said that, unfortunately, considering that my mom's, I guess, pay was too high, that they couldn't give me enough money for that, because my mom was like, well, that's not fair, because why didn't they tell you that your classes weren't covered but still let you enroll into these classes? And still let you take these classes, and then all of a sudden, abruptly, they cut you out. I was like, I'm like, that's pretty messed up. She's like, yeah, and now you're here struggling, trying to find a way to pay these classes, and it was like a whole mess.
Stressful. It was the beginning, first couple days trying to figure it out, and it really was extremely a lot.
Yeah, luckily we had to figure it out, and it's okay now, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Eduardo, your first couple days in class, what did it look like? What did it feel like?
I mean, I just went in there, had to do what I had to do. I was not nervous. I mean, I come from a background where being nervous is a daily thing. So being in a classroom to me was just, cakewalk. So I'm older than a lot of the students. So I just go in there. I really don't care who's sitting next to me, what they're wearing, what I'm wearing. You know, I'm there to do my work. Not, it sounds bad, but I'm not there to make friends, you know. If they become friends, then by all means, but that's not my goal. So I'm not really worried about what they think, see, or whatnot. Thankfully, I don't have to worry about the financial part. Uncle Sam got me covered, you know. So being a soldier from Texas, actually, the Hazelwood covers all my classes.
Yeah.
Then I take the Montgomery bill, and then I use that to buy books and stuff like that. And then I have my disability pay. So, you know, and then at the time I was working at Dillard's. I was a suit specialist, so I was making pretty good, you know, money. So I didn't have to worry about that at all. So I really didn't have to go through any stress. I mean,
Let me ask you, is there maybe a distinction between stress and transition, or are they both one and the same for you?
no, the transition wasn't bad, you know, not for school at least. When I first got out the military, being a civilian was really hard because I would talk to people the way I would talk to soldiers. So that's not supposed to happen. But, you know, when it became school, I was just like, okay, you know, I'm older. I'm here to just do what I'm going to do, listen to the teacher, take notes, take quiz, and that's it. Because I've taken classes in the military before, and, you know, it was military classes. It wasn't like math or anything. But I already had that mindset that I'm just there to do work, and it was not a transition that was hard at all. It still is not, you know, so you see me, I walk in, sit down, pay attention, walk out. I don't really talk to nobody.
What do you think you've learned about yourself, Jasmine, that you didn't know? You know, this many weeks in to the semester. I think there's always a lesson in everything, right? How you know, the first couple of days trying to figure out all that stuff and, you know, trying to place that so you don't get too distracted. But, you know, I think we learn things about ourselves along the way in the classroom.
Right.
What are some things that you've learned about yourself in terms of your capability in the classroom, and what are some things that you think you definitely need to work on?
Right. When it comes to going into class on time and being there and taking the notes, I feel like I have that on point. I could listen to the teachers or to the instructors, and I can take the notes. I get the information, and I could study it because I did learn how to at one point. I learned that I need to eliminate everything and just focus and do it. And sometimes my mom helps me out, and she repeats the things, and sometimes she'll take it away, and she'll help me out with that a lot. I think some things I have to probably work on is just balancing my time. I could be a big procrastinator when it comes to things, when it comes to projects, and I'm like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it this time, because I don't go out a lot. I really don't, and I always have time. You know, that's why I guess that's why the procrastination comes, and I'm just like, oh, I'll do
There's
this
always
some other.
time.
Yeah, there's
Right.
always time.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I always have time because I hardly go out with friends. I'm usually at home. I don't really do much. But I guess that's the only thing I really need to work on, because I'll have all these things piling up, and then I kind of do it last minute. I'm like, oh, I got to do this really quick. I got to do this. And it kind of increases my stress. But other than that, I think managing my time well, I really need to work on, considering that in high school, I had ample time. I could do it last minute and turn it in, and that was okay for those teachers. But this is different. Now it's a college class, and they want the quality more of how much you give. And that's what I have to give, you know, because I realized that it's not just, oh, turn it in last minute. No, it's the quality of your work that they look for more, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think everything's driven a lot by the quality, never quantity.
Yeah.
Always quality driven. What are some things that you've learned about yourself? What are some things you really do need to work on as you move through this nursing career?
I mean, I learned that I'm pretty determined, and I have a lot of discipline when it comes to doing the work. You know, I used to procrastinate a lot, but now I don't, because I'm like, if I don't pass this class, that's it, man. I'm not gonna be a nurse, and there goes my, you know, my time. And right now I'm not, and I'm at the age where I can't waste time. You know, like I need to get my things done quick.
Yeah.
I've learned that, I mean, I can make time and do the things that are supposed to be done. So that's one of the big things. One thing that I do notice, though, is when teachers teach with a passion, you learn. Like you yourself, I love the way you teach. I have another teacher, Jaime Calderon, great teacher. They don't teach from a book. They teach from their head, from their heart, and that makes it so much easier. Michael Silva too, like anatomy. A lot of people say it's hard, but the way he teaches, it's like it's just in your brain, he makes little jokes and it sticks in your brain. So props to that. So that's one thing that really does help. It's not so much me, it's the teacher. Because if the teacher teaches right, the student learns.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate your kindness.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, as the semester progresses, and I begin to see some students trickle, and then I see some of them that are struggling, and then I just normally close my book and say, this is who I am. I'm nobody to give advice. God knows I have a lot of scars because, I've made a lot of mistakes and fell a lot of times, and I was that kid and an adult, So these are like my scars, right? Because that helps the student. They find that relatable. So my question to you would be, because at the end of the day, when you become professionals, you'll have that opportunity to speak to younger generations, right? What will you tell them that they can find inspiring and relatable?
Yeah.
Me, myself?
Both of you.
Well, all the troubles that I've been through in life, I've had a lot of bumps in my life, a lot of them. So, but as long as you put that behind you and you start anew, it's never too, like you said, it's never too late.
Never.
I've done a lot of mistakes, but now I don't drink anymore, or, as much. But I'm determined to go to school. I don't go out to party. I don't go out to drink. I'm more of a school person. So that's one of the big things. And that's one of the things that I see or I hear around in school. Like, hey, you're going to go to this party. Hey, we're going to drink. And it's like, it's not cool to be a drunk, It's like, you drink a little, but, have your priorities set. That's what I would tell other people. It's, it's not against, success to drink a little bit, Go ahead. But with, with limits. Have a limit, have priorities, stuff like that. I mean, as long as you see your mistakes and change them, that makes you a better person. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to talking to younger generations, I would say you can't care about what other people think of you at one point. It comes to just yourself, because people are not, because you control over your own life. And I'm one of those people that I know a lot of kids like in high school now are struggling with maybe depression or anxiety, suicide. I feel as though when it comes to those certain things, you need to really focus on yourself, because at that point people are worried about, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, or things like that. But you need to really focus on your own happiness and focus on working on yourself and doing things your way, and realizing that people can be toxic, or they can be the negative. They could bring out the bad sides of you, and you don't want that, because yes, the group that you hang out with does determine the kind of person you will come out to be. And I feel like distancing yourself from the people, working on you and realizing, hey, this isn't right, I need to fix this, can really improve you as a person. And it's just, I'm not too sure, but it's just the maturity as well of growing up and doing those experiences. But I feel like when it comes to high school, I've realized that when I've spoken to my other friends, they're like, I'm worried about my girlfriend. I'm like, what? I'm like, who cares? I'm like, you have school to worry about. You have other things you got to worry about right now. I'm like, who? I'm like, I get it. Like, they're another person too, and they have emotions too. But what about you? I'm like, where are you going to be? Like, are you know for sure you're going to be with this person for the rest of your life?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I find that very interesting because I had both my parents, but my mother was always in my ear. And she told me several things. First of all, I don't come from money. The only thing that I can inherit you is your education, right? Exactly. So that's how she raised us, meaning my sisters were 3 girls. That's how she raised us, right? And then as time went by, just like everybody here in the circle, right, has mentioned, I didn't have like an idea of how to study. So that freshman year, and this is where I tell my students that freshman year was rough. So I had to sit down and have a conversation with myself and tell myself, either you start swimming right now, or God knows what's going to happen to you. You know, back in the days, it was, you're going to start flipping burgers. And that was out of the question, right? So I tell my students, I made a lot of rookie mistakes, but I'm here, though.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm that story that I went through my struggles. I did whatever I wasn't a partying person either. Whatever my parents said, I followed because, what is it? Learn through somebody else's experiences. And that was me. That was me as a kid. Right? So I tell my students, I made this rookie mistake, and this rookie mistake, and their eyes are like, we're not all this story of, we're born with a silver spoon in our mouth. No, we all, had to struggle and fight. And that's what makes me interested in other people's, like, what are your rookie mistakes? So how did you say, okay, regroup, adapt, and modify, right? That's normally my approach. And still as an adult, I keep on doing that over and over. Every semester, that we get different students, and then we're moving into a different generation of students, right? The Gen Zs, they learn different to millennials. I have Gen X's, and to a point that I had boomers in my classroom. And to us, it's like adapt and modify. Let's read the room, right? And so I try to relate to them, tell them, I'm this person that has built herself from the ground up. I'm not somebody that has been gifted anything. I've had my struggles financially. Luckily my parents were always there. My mother was always in my ear. So that's what I like to hear, These are my scars. These are my rookie mistakes. But you know what? I've moved on.
You should wear it with pride because it's
Exactly.
that reflection, and it comes with your work too, because I'm in dance and we have these jazz shoes, and my jazz shoes are all torn up and beaten, and she's like, no, that's your pride because that's your hard work. My dance instructor, she's like, that's you. Like, that's all the hard work that you went through. She's like, you should keep them. I'm like, oh, thank you. But how you said, it's that pride, and I feel like it makes us stronger as individuals. It does.
Right.
And everybody has this beautiful story. I was listening to the Dr. Brene Brown from University of Houston, who does her research on vulnerability and shame research mostly. And I'm always fascinated with anything she does. So kind of, this beautiful question that Claudia put on the table, talking about, what you would tell somebody else. Everybody learns, everybody is a lesson in learning. And I think when somebody shares their story, like this table, sharing their story, it provides two things. I think it provides healing for me, usually, just in my own journey, because I hear somebody and I'm like, totally relatable, years apart, generations apart from you all, totally relatable to some of the things that you said today. And also, it builds a little bit of confidence in yourself. Look, like, good for me. Look, I made it just yet another day. And Claudia is really, my superhero. She's very humble. She won't talk about herself. And I don't think we've ever talked about it in this podcast. But she has endured and worn many hats, a former boxer, a current firefighter, a professor, a chef. The freaking list is so long. And so, it's always an honor to sit with her at the table because, she brings such a beautiful perspective in terms of insight to the conversation. So, always a pleasure to have her here. And let me ask you about one other thing, and then we'll likely wrap up. Your peers in the classroom, as you said, sometimes we can be, the Gen Zers, the Gen Xers, the baby boomers in the classroom, the early college, high school, 15-year-olds in the classroom. What are some things, Eduardo, you've learned from your peers? There's always a classroom is full of learning. Yeah, you've learned from me. I've learned from you. But you have some incredible minds in that 1 o'clock class that you sit with. You don't sit with. They just happen to be. You guys are just right there in the front. So, and not only them, but everybody in the class. What have you learned from your peers in the classroom?
Honestly, from them, I mean, I've given them more advice than I have taken from them. They don't, they're really young. So there's times where like they wanna leave before the class to go meet up with somebody, and we're about to start in like 10 or 5 minutes, and I'm like, don't go, you're in class. So I'm not gonna say like, oh, I've learned so much from them, because honestly, I can't really say I have. But I've taught them to be like, hey, man, like, this is your priority. If that person is asking you to go and meet them like 10 minutes away and class is about to start in 5, you know, that's a red flag. You know, they don't care about your education. Like, you need to stay here. And then, yeah, that person ended up staying, you know, and they're like, oh, you're right. So I'm not going to sit here and like, oh, I've learned so much from my peers, because there's really only like 2 people I sort of talk to. But so that's really much it.
Well, I think the beauty in what you said is that you were comfortable enough to be able to share advice. I don't know if I would be. I was a little shy, if you can believe it. I know. But I never felt that I was enough in terms of being able to share with somebody. Now I'm okay, but it was sitting where you were at that age and sitting where Jazz was at that age. I wasn't comfortable enough, Eduardo, to say, hey, this is what you need to think about. So good for you that you felt like you were in a position with those folks to be able to verbalize, communicate, hey, let's rethink and reassess here what you're doing. That's a good thing. That's a good position to be in.
And it's a thing of leadership, I guess you could say. And I have my night class, and they're like, well, if the teacher wasn't here, who would you all pick for a teacher? And they all said Eddie. And then the teacher made a joke, like, why? Because he's the oldest? It's like, no, because he's firm with what he says. And I'm not too worried about like, oh, he's going to get mad because I tell him not to go. I don't really care. I'm telling you to do the right thing. I'm not going to steer anybody to do a bad thing, you know? Like, I'm not going to take them down the bad road, because I've been down that bad road. And I'm like, don't do that. Don't go there, you know? Stay here, you know? Go after class. Why do you have to go right now? Go after class. So I'm not much of like, oh, they're not going to like me if I tell them. I really don't care, you know? So I say things how they are, how they should be. So.
And that, like I said, that's a wonderful trait to have. You know, Jazz, your experience in terms of the classroom. We have also a unique group of people. A lot of the baseball team is in our classroom.
Yeah.
You know, they contribute a lot. Very highly intelligent, sophisticated people in their room. A little quieter than Eddie's class, but some incredible minds. And we get into these conversations where you hear the insight people have, and it's just so enlightening.
It's nice to hear their stories as well, because as much as they are quiet, and I'm also part of that, I'm a very quiet person too, and I am very shy. But once they have something to talk about or something important to speak, then they really do let their mind, and they really do give out their opinions. And there's a bunch of people who you could see that they're just more enclosed because of it. But I think my experience in that classroom is really good. I like talking to some of the students there outside of class. I have. And sometimes we've all helped each other before as well when it comes to your exams or when it comes to the notes. Like, when we need each other, we're there, if that makes sense. It doesn't have to be verbally communicated, but we all know that we could help each other because we're comfortable enough to be with one another.
What would you predict in terms of, this education that you're both receiving now? This isn't the end. This is the hopefully the beginning of a love with education in itself. What do you predict? We're on a what's the word I'm looking for? We're in a political, cultural, and social situation that is highly unpredictable, and that every minute could be in turmoil. Your generation will inherit a lot as it relates to those things. What do you predict just in terms of education for your peers, for people that are maybe 10 years old now, given the political, social, and maybe economic circumstances that we're in right now? What do you predict?
To be honest, I don't know much about what's going on right now with education, but from what I do hear is that they are not denying, but blocking a lot of things for certain schools.
And when you say they...
I don't know if it's the government. Like I said, I'm not too sure, but I know that they started like banning books, right?
Yeah, we talked
or
about that,
certain education programs like sex ed. I don't know if they still do sex ed in school.
Yes.
They do? Okay, so
it's
that's
all
not one
about
thing.
abstinence in Texas, yes.
So,
Yes.
like, I remember there was a time where they're like, oh, we shouldn't do that in school. We should keep it at home. And then there's like the point where like, well, what if at home they don't teach you anything? then where are you going to learn it? In the streets, from experience, which you don't want to do experience for STDs, so you don't want to learn that way. You want to learn from a class. So when it comes to education, I don't know if I'm not understanding the question, but
And I'm thinking about maybe some 10-year-olds that are looking at us right now. And, what do you predict? We just have a midterm election. We have an economic situation, a lot of inflation, doesn't look good for the next 2 years. We have some social situations out there that exist. And I'm asking you to look at all of those things, maybe even some of the things we've talked about in the classroom, both of you, and to make a prediction for these 10-year-olds as they grow up and they engage in their own educational journey.
well, hopefully it goes good. Right now, the way I see kids growing up, I don't see it good. That whole TikTok and all that. Last time we had a conversation in one of our classes, and they're like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" This person was 19, female. She said, "I want to be a professional TikToker." I get it. They make money, but I mean, what happened to, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a police officer. Something. I want to be a TikToker. To me, that's where this generation's going. And I mean, we're evolving. We have to see that, but I don't like where it's going.
I hear you. I hear you. Very real. Very, very, very real, right? The measurement of social media in our lives is we know there's an impact. Hard to predict or hard to measure what level of impact, but absolutely an impact. What would you say, Jazz?
I would say that education now is becoming more competitive when it comes to, I guess, people having the same skill set and then technology advancing really, really quick. A lot of jobs are not going to need the manpower that it used to. It's going to be consumed by machines, and because of that, things have become a lot more competitive in education. Like you have to strive even harder and work even harder in order to get a job that's going to last you and that's going to be there in the future. I guess that's the only struggle that I see as of right now. Because now with technology, it's replacing, I guess, the manpower that we need. Even in military también, like machines mostly kind of do, or they're working on machines to mostly do, I guess, to go out in the field rather than just the soldiers. Yeah, the warfare things, like these drones that they're using now. And I feel like at one point we're not going to need as much people to do certain things
And it's
anymore.
kind of sad.
It is kind of sad because
you lose that art, many things.
Exactly.
You don't have anybody who works wood anymore,
Yeah.
cement, which is
Exactly.
needed.
It is.
And
No,
not
they're
just
going to
that, but
have...
we're growing. Like we said,
Exactly.
another
Yeah.
billion people, right, in the world.
8 billion people
So
as
it's
of,
like-
2 weeks ago? Yeah.
Exactly.
Less jobs, more people. Where is this going?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
It really is.
No, again, I'd like to, as we close this conversation, thank you so much for your time today, talking about education, talking about your own journeys, talking about life itself. Always really spectacular to hear from you, and always grateful. So thank you, Eduardo. Silva, thank you. Jasmine Marquez for coming. Thank you, Claudia Chacon,
Thanks,
for
Doc.
coming, and very grateful to the EPCC TV family. And so thank you again from EPCC Talks.